Hi, Ashley. How are you doing?
Hi, Sixto. I'm doing great. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm so happy that you are part of our series here, the Carlos Chavez Project. This is your very first guest, so this is a really exciting.
Well, it's an honor for me too, and I feel like a blast from the past getting to see you again after we went to school together all those years ago.
I know. For some of you that are watching, Ashley and I were freshmen together at Arizona State in 2005, I believe. She was bassoon
2000.
performance major. I was a flute major. So we were in the same dorm together, and now here we are.
Now here we are. Look how far we've come.
Right? So, Ashley, just tell us a little bit about your background, just real quick, before we go into this exciting topic of Mexican bassoon music for electro acoustics.
Sure.
Tell us.
Well, originally I'm from Colorado, a small town in between Denver and Colorado Springs, Monument, Colorado. I grew up there. I went to public school, and when I got to the sixth grade, they had band, and it was my chance to. They had a trial day, and I went in. I wanted to play the oboe for some reason. I'm not sure why, but they gave it to me, and it's one of those things that sort of clicks or it doesn't. And the oboe totally did not click for me. But they said we have another instrument that you might like. It's bigger. It has a lower sound. Okay, I'll give it a try. And they put the bassoon in my hands, and it just seemed to click. So I started in middle school band in the public school system there, and I really began to fall in love with bassoon and music once I started with the youth symphony that was in town. That was around like 12, 13 years of age. And once I got to know orchestral music and have all my social circle and everything involved with the youth symphony, we did a bit of traveling, and that really like ignited what music could be for me, what the bassoon could be for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So from
And
there, I mean, I went all through high school, and then I just knew that I wanted to be a bassoon performance major. I mean, music performance is such a tricky degree to get into. But I ended up auditioning, and I went to ASU. That's where you and I met. I majored in bassoon performance. I was there 4 years, the typical, bassoon performance degree. And then I went right on to do a master's at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I was there for 2 years for my master's, and then 2 years for my doctoral coursework. I was also the TA for a number of those years.
yeah, that's fantastic. I remember when we were in college, I know how dedicated you were to practicing and the bassoon, and you loved performing in an orchestra and band and doing recitals and all of that. So I can attest to that for sure.
Well, thanks. I have at least one witness. Yeah, I mean, it requires a ton of practice. I mean, especially in those early years when you're going from, a system you grew up with basically as a beginner into like the college level of playing. It's more rigorous, and yeah, it requires a ton of time. So yeah, it
Great.
has practice rooms. You knew that.
And how about your DMA? When did that begin?
My
Or
DMA started in 2010. I went directly from my master's to my DMA. I was offered a college teaching assistantship at the same school. I loved my teacher. I love my professor, Tim McGovern. And it was such a smooth transition. So I did the DMA coursework in 2 years. And then right after those 2 years is when all this Mexico stuff happened.
yeah, I mean that's so exciting. But did you say that you did some research while you were getting your DMA about, was it? No, it was while you went. How did it
I
all
know it's
happen? I
it's
mean,
it's a totally confusing story. I'm sure like I'm gonna even forget part of it as I tell it. But like I was in my last semester of my coursework when this Mexico opportunity came up. So now I'm in Monterrey, Mexico. I'm currently the principal bassoon player of the orchestra here. But at the time there was an opening for second bassoon. And so I got an email. John Velos, who was also a friend of ours at ASU, he was a bassoon player here at the time, and he gave them my contact information. I went down for a couple of trial weeks. It wasn't a blind audition like they do in the States. It was a trial period. So I got to come down for a couple of weeks at a time, which is for me a great way to see if I fit in with the orchestra, really show what I have to give. So Yeah, I finished my DMA coursework on like a Wednesday, and then I packed my car and I drove south and I moved to Mexico and started rehearsing with the orchestra the next Monday. So just a little geography lesson. Monterrey is located directly south from San Antonio. If you go by land, it's probably like a 5-hour drive. So we're really not that far. We're not a border town, but we're not that far from the US. So it's a very Americanized city. But anyways, that's kind of how it started. So then I left my DMA coursework. And you know, as a DMA student, that it doesn't end there with your doctorate. You have to take comprehensive exams. You have to write a thesis or a dissertation. So then, I mean, I was a full-time performing musician, and I sort of just got, wrapped up in performing and sort of thought, oh, I'll finish the DMA someday. So I did my comps. I flew back and I did my comps in my comprehensive exams, excuse me. I did my comprehensive exams in 2014, and then I just finished my lecture recitals, my thesis, and all of that stuff in 2019. So that's just a lesson to all of us DMA people who say, I'll finish it someday, I'll finish it someday. It really is possible, and I'm glad I did it. I don't know what the future holds for me with that, but at least I have the degree now, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a long journey, but it's totally worth it. So was being in Mexico, did it inspire you to do a little research on your DMA project, or did any of that spark your curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, like writing a DMA project, it has to be something either that no one's written about before, or something that people have written about, but you have to do your own spin on it. So I chose the former, and I thought, well, I think there's a good opportunity here to do something with Mexican composers for bassoon. So I started just delving into research of what existed for bassoon, and how I landed on this with electronics thing is basically a question of logistics, right? I mean, I live in Mexico, and I needed to travel to do these recitals in the States. So like, I would have loved to do a project on woodwind quintet stuff or bassoon with piano stuff, but the logistics were I was on my own, and so the electronic track, and it's a solo from there. So that's kind of how that started.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool. When I saw on Facebook that you were giving this recital, I said immediately, this is probably a really good opportunity to to see if I can interview Ashley, and she can get on this platform to talk a little bit about this music from Mexican composers. I mean, obviously, the whole purpose of this Carlos Chavez project is to create more awareness, right? To more exposure, to support more classical music, Mexican classical music, in not only in the United States but around the world. And it's music that is so high quality, that is so wonderful. It's up to to the level of any European master composer. And there's so much talent, right? And this music is very underperformed, and not a lot of people know about it. So there's a lot of challenges, and I'm hoping the series brings a little more awareness to that, and maybe inspires publishers to take a little more chances and publish more music, right? Um, so that's why I think I saw that you were giving this recital, and I said, oh my gosh, I gotta get Ashley on this. I gotta get started, because I've been wanting to start the series for a while, but I hadn't really found quite the right thing, and I just thought this would just be so cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your program, and first where it's going to be and how people can watch it, but then also maybe you can go a little bit, if you want, talk to us a little bit about the composers and the music that you're going to perform on, I believe it's September
September
3rd,
3rd,
right?
yeah, a week from yesterday. So September 3rd at 8 p.m. Central Time, and I'm sure you can share the link for me. Well, what I was going to say, just going back, one point of yours is that, yeah, of course, I mean, in the States and here in Mexico, a lot of the repertoire selection is very Eurocentric. But I mean, the music and the composers here in Mexico, they have roots, European roots also. So for example, Mexican composers, let's just go back a little bit, right? Mexican composers around the time of like the Mexican Revolution in the early 1900s, they were primarily composing nationalistic music, right? With folk melodies and folk themes. And this kind of nationalistic compositional style was happening in Europe and the United States, right? So like a lot of some notable Mexican nationalistic composers would be Moncayo, which everybody knows, right? Ponce, Jose Rolon. And then it goes into where this project stems from, the composers including Carlos Chavez, Silvestre Revueltas. They were sort of like a transitional, they were still writing in a compositional style that didn't exactly quote folk song, but evoked like that sort of Mexican folk type street music sound, right? And with the death of composer Moncayo in 1958 is typically considered a major turning point away from that nationalistic compositional ideology here in Mexico, right? So there's a Spanish-born composer named Rodolfo Hafter. Do you know his music, Sixto? Yeah, so he was a major influencer of Mexican composers moving from that neoclassical nationalism to actually serialism and atonal music. Hafter, he moved to Mexico and he actually gained his Mexican citizenship after the Spanish Civil War. His compositional aesthetics were influenced by European composers such as Schoenberg, Debussy, and Falla. So he's one of the first like big compositional teachers. He taught at the National Conservatory of Music in Mexico City. He had major influence on the future generations of the composers in Mexico. Yeah, composers began to favor this sort of universal compositional style. That's what you and I we chatted briefly yesterday, right? Talking about that moving away from folk music to a nationalistic universal style where I don't have to hear a typical Mexican folk tune to know that this music is Mexican. So all three of the pieces on my recital in a week are from composers with this lineage, right? It's a Mexican lineage, but it's also tied in a bit to a European lineage.
Yeah, I think that's so important and so interesting. A lot of them also, I think, some of them even studied in Europe too. They went there and studied, but um, there's um, there's this thing where there's only a couple of pieces that are performed very often that we know of, right? The Wapango. That's the and they're beautiful pieces, and I love them, and I could conduct them or play them all day long. Actually, I did the Wapango when I was at grad
And
school,
and we do them a ton here too.
and
They do
it's
the
so much. They're so much fun. You know, they're crowd pleasers, right?
sure, sure, of course.
And people love them, and they just get performed so much. The Wapango is one. Danzón number 2 by Marquez is another one, right? I think Alondra La Parra just did a, a beautiful virtual video with musicians from the Berlin Philharmonic on Danzón number 2, a wonderful piece. Yes, I think these are great examples of Mexican, but there's so much more, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
so much more to explore, and so this is very exciting that you can that you're going to perform this music.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited too. So my recital includes three pieces. It's Plegarias by Mario Lavista. It's De tus manos brotan pájaros by Javier Alvarez, and it's Twilight by Rodrigo Sigal. All three of which are still living, still working, still composing. Um, so before I talk about those pieces specifically, I wanted to give a little shout out. The history of bassoon in Mexico can't be told without mentioning Wendy Holdaway. She's an American-born bassoon player based in Mexico City since like the 1980s, I think. She's really unparalleled in her dedication to commissioning music for bassoon. I think she has like over 100 commissions or dedications, like whether it be She has a woodwind quintet she performs with. She has a woodwind trio she performs with. She has a pianist she regularly performs with, and then these solo pieces too. So all three of these pieces were commissioned by her or dedicated to her, and she premiered all these pieces, and she recorded all these pieces too. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her. These pieces wouldn't exist without her hard work. So
That's awesome.
and we got to support each other, us bassoonists, us ladies, so um
Absolutely.
and she's super cool too. So I'm glad to have met her. I mean, I've never studied with her or anything like that, but she has a lot of students in Mexico City. She plays in the National Symphony, I think. So yeah, she's like a bassoon legend here, and we're just trying to further that development that she's done. So should I go ahead?
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about each specific piece? What should we expect?
And the composers too. Can I talk about a little bit about?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Sure. So I think I should start. The first one I should start with is Mario Lavista. He was born in 1943, and he's really acknowledged as one of Mexico's foremost living composers. He is one of the most influential composition teachers in Mexico as well, and he has been for like the past 40 years. In fact, both the other composers, Javier Alvarez and Rodrigo Sigal, are students of Mario Lavista. So in 1963, he began his formal compositional studies in Mexico City at the National Conservatory of Music, where his principal teachers were Carlos Chavez and Rodolfo Hafter. So he's directly in that lineage, right? He enrolled in the composer's workshop started by Carlos Chavez in 1960. And Chavez at the time, was considered the most important composer in Mexico and was really a catalyst for the recognition and respect for Mexican music abroad. And the students in the composer's workshop at this time were considered part of the post-nationalist compositional movement, and even were named the post-nationalist generation. So Lavista did spend a bit of time studying abroad. He studied in France and he studied in Germany. And some of his teachers include Nadia Boulanger, Yanis Xenakis, and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. So
very unknown people that nobody
very
knows
like,
about.
I don't know if you've heard about those guys before. So anyways, this time that he spent abroad studying really heightened his international worldview and furthered his interests in a universal compositional style, separate from any one nationality. So that's kind of what we've been talking about today. So during the 60s and 70s, Lavista experimented was until 1976 with his piece Quotations for cello and piano that he became interested in the possibilities of new sounds on traditional instruments in the form of extended techniques, which Plegarias has extended techniques for bassoon. Actually, all three of these pieces have extended techniques, contemporary techniques for bassoon. So Plegarias, which means prayers, translates to prayers, was commissioned by Holdaway and the Mexican Center for Music and Sonic Arts, and was premiered by Holdaway at the International New Music Forum, Manuel Enriquez, in Mexico City during 2009. The piece has a lot of like religious themes. If you look into it, a lot of intervals that have religious meanings. And the piece in the electronic track begins with a bell toll ringing in open fifths. So right from the beginning, the listener's sort of taken into this religious sort of mindset, right? The next sound that you hear in the electronic track are sounds of birds flapping their wings. And to me, it sounds like the birds being startled out of the bell tower by the ringing bells. So then,
I love that.
It's beautiful. It's very theatrical. It's a very theatrical piece. So the bassoon melody is full of interesting and non-traditional sounds from the bassoon. And the interplay between the bassoon and the track is really interesting. At times the track is ahead of the bassoon, and at times it's following the bassoon. So I think that's one really beautiful part of the piece. He also, on a more technical level, he includes two main types of extended techniques. So on bassoon, we do alternate fingerings, which provide like a timbral change. So the pitch is not going to change, but he does these timbre change series where you start on one note, then you add a finger, release a tone hole, and you get all these different timbral changes on one note. So that's really interesting. And then he also uses multiphonics. So multiphonics are basically, I mean, usually a bassoon, you put a certain fingering pattern and a note comes out. Well, this is sort of like trying to trick the bassoon into making more than one sound at once, right? So he does this in like different series, and then he also does it like isolated multiphonics. And if you'll listen, I don't know the minute, I should have it off the top of my head, but there's a point where the bassoon is actually sounding like those bell tones from the beginning, but it's actually sounding like a distorted bell tone. So you hear this dung, 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 but it's in a multiphonic on the bassoon. So it's a really special piece, and I think that the audience is really, really gonna like it. I've grown to like it. I don't know about my husband and my roommate that have to hear me practice it all the time.
I'm sure
But
I'm sure they love
I'm
it.
sure they love it. I'm sure they love it. So that's the first piece. And La Vista, he's really like the most prolific composer. I mean, he's been around longer. He's been a teacher longer. He's been composing longer. And these next two composers, they are students of his. So the next piece, it's De tus manos brotan pájaros, which translates to birds spring from your hands. It's by Javier Alvarez, who was also born in Mexico City. He was born in 1956. And he's internationally recognized composer and educator, actually. His compositions have been performed around the world, and he's had a lot of nominations and awards for his electroacoustic music, his instrumental, and also he's done some movie music. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he's done, but that's another thing to research. Isn't that the interesting thing about research? Of every corner you turn, everything you learn, it's like you want to, there's so much more.
It is. You just, I mean, you just keep going down, you know, you just find something and then you just keep going and keep going and keep going and just digging, digging, digging. Oh my gosh.
And the more you
Yes.
know, like the more it opens, like there's more there is to know.
That's
So
exactly how I feel about it. You know, it's so, so, so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he began his formal studies also in Mexico City with Mario Lavista and Daniel Catan at the National Conservatory. He's
Oh,
part of the,
I love, by the way, I love Daniel Catan, by the way. Oh my gosh. He was, oh, his music. Wow. We
yeah.
got to have a whole episode on his music, but
Sure, let's write. We
yeah.
should be taking notes of these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh,
So I
yeah.
mean, Alvarez is part of the Chavez Composers Workshop, that same lineage. He went on to study in the States. He got a master's in music at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And he also studied at the Royal College of Music and earned his PhD from the City University in London. So just as a side note, I want to point out that in addition to his accomplishments as a composer, Alvarez is also a dedicated academic and promoter of contemporary music. He's a member of the National Fund for Culture and Arts in Mexico. He's a member of the Mexican Center for Music and Sonic Arts. And he currently serves as professor and as the director of the Escuela Superior de Artes in Merida, Yucatan. So that's basically, you know, what you do and what I do, Sixto, is, I mean, performing is great, but also supporting the arts, bringing awareness. So I think your project, this all fits in perfectly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially nowadays with technology and, you know, the social media and Zoom, it's so easy to just put these things, you know, to do a conference like this and just share it with everybody, right? Why not take advantage of where we are now?
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so it's very, it's really important for sure.
I think so. I'm happy to be part of it. And I'm happy, I mean, all this, I should say, this research comes from like my doctoral work. So I'm happy that like I get to use it again. I mean, usually people write a thesis and they just, you know, throw it into the recycle bin and be like, okay, that's good, I finished. So
Right? Yeah. And I mean, it's you spend so much time researching and writing, and you know, it's something that you definitely want to revisit and build on, you know, and that's really cool. That I think it's really cool that even without knowing, because you and I have kept in touch with each other through social media, but we didn't necessarily know the details of what we were studying and what we were writing about. But I think it's
Right.
really interesting now that we've reconnected to see that your doctoral project was, in some ways similar to my project, which was inspired by Mexico and its music, right? And also, I'm consider myself. I mean, I'm a Mexican American. I was born in Mexico, but grew up in the United States, so
And
Mexican
I'm kind of
American.
the opposite. I mean, I'm an American, and then now I've had my professional career at least for 8 years here in Mexico.
Right,
So
and now you live in Monterrey and you love it, and then it's so cool that it's exactly what we should be doing right now is building connections, uh, building bridges, not not walls, right? I mean, not to get
not
political,
not to get
but
political.
it's so true. It's like,
I,
we have this tension between our two countries right now, and it's sad, but I think uh, we can we can help with music. We can help with arts
yeah.
by connecting each other. And but I
Yeah,
was
the
still,
tension is
yeah,
unnecessary, and it's a shame because we have so much more in common, and like you said, build bridges. I mean, and I mean,
yeah,
maybe you and I are just one piece of sand on that beach, right? We can just make a little bit of change in our small social circles. So
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And more things to come in this space
sure.
for the
Well,
Carlos Chavez project for
in
sure.
the theme of that, let me keep talking about some of these pieces.
Absolutely.
So this composition, De tus manos brotan pájaros, it's for bassoon and electronics, all of these are. And this piece was also written for Wendy Holdaway as a part of a recording project by the same name. She has an actual album called De tus manos brotan pájaros, Mexican music for bassoon. And there's more pieces on that, not just the electronic music pieces. There's other compositions by Mexican composers. So this piece was premiered at the International New Music Forum in Mexico City in 2010. So Alvarez specializes in the composition of works for solo instruments and electroacoustic sounds. He even wrote a dissertation about this in his time at the City University. And I like this quote. I mean, I have some notes here. I like this quote. He says that he's always been fascinated by motion and its images, how people dance, how insects fly, how shadows are cast, etc. And he says that that's been a starting point for many of his musical explorations. And I think that that imagery of flight can be observed not only from the title of this piece, but not only do the birds fly from your hands, they spring, right? And not from a static tree branch, but from your hands. So this imagery can be heard even from the beginning of this piece. This piece opens with a free bassoon cadenza before the electronic track comes in. Um, and it is sort of, the bassoon line sort of finally takes flight on this microtonal trill entrance at the same moment as the electronic track. And then the bassoon sort of soaring line over this complex electronic track continues throughout the entire piece. So this piece also requires extended techniques, it does include a few um, multiphonics, but more than that includes microtonal pitches, right, which are basically quarter tones in this case. So on bassoon, similarly to every other note produced by the bassoon, microtonal pitches are achieved by pressing a certain combination of finger tone holes or keys, combined with embouchure and air pressure and all the things it takes to play a wind instrument. But the difference is that none of these fingerings are standardized. So as a bassoon player taking on something like this, most bassoon players have to do a significant amount of research to find potential fingering options, and then do a lot of trial and error to figure out which fingering is the best for each occasion. And so in some ways, it's almost like learning the bassoon all over again, because these fingerings are brand new. At least they were for me. Maybe there's more experts out there who can play complete microtonal scales. Kudos to them. Maybe I can aim for that in the future. But for me, this was a really new undertaking, and something that I think really sets this piece apart from the other two in this sense.
I love that. I can't wait to hear it.
I can't wait to play it again. I'm really looking forward to it. But so, anyways, those are the first two, and then there's one more piece. It's called Twilight. In the ad on the link, they translated it, but the actual title's in English. It's called Twilight for Bassoon and Electroacoustic Sounds by Rodrigo Sigal. Rodrigo was born in 1971 in Mexico City, and he's recognized most for his electroacoustic and electronic music compositions. He earned his bachelor's of music degree at the Center for Music Investigation and Studies in Mexico City, and he was also a student of the Composer's Workshop led by Mario Chavez. He also earned his PhD in electroacoustic composition at the City University in London, England. So he's been recognized internationally with nominations and awards. And actually, Twilight itself earned an honorable mention at the Luigi Russolo Sound Art Competition, and was a finalist at the International Competition for Electroacoustic Music and Sonic Arts in France in 2002. In addition to his work as a composer, Sigal is also very active in academia and in music administration. He currently serves as a board member for the Latin American Sonic Arts Network and is a founding member and a current director at the Mexican Center for Music and Sonic Arts. And then Twilight was premiered again by Holdaway. I tell you, this lady is like epic. I mean, she's just commissioned all this stuff. I'm so happy that she did all of this. But she premiered it in 2001 in Mexico City, and it also appears on her album De tus manos brotan pájaros. So this piece is really also sort of theatric in the way that throughout the 4 continuous movements of this piece, I think it lasts around 14 minutes, Sigal takes the performer and the listener through the 4 stages of the setting sun. So the 4 movements: twilight, astronomical twilight, and true night. And each movement sort of has characteristics that portray those changes as the sun sets, right? So there's a point where you can still see everything with the naked eye. There's a point where shadows start to come in. There's a point where we can no longer see and lights start to be turned on, and then, true night. So it's really, really interesting. So also, one favorite thing about this piece for me is that Sigal, I think, really was influenced by the unique timbre possibilities of the bassoon. And I think he intentionally developed like a discourse between the track and the live instrument. So the musical texture is, I think, intentionally ambiguous, creating uncertainty for the listener. Is the bassoon leading? Is the track leading? These boundaries between the live sound and the recorded sound are almost indistinguishable at times. And that interplay and exchange of those 2 musical participants, it almost, as Sigal is a more electronic music composer, it almost puts the electronic music and the live music on the same platform, instead of I'm the performer and the electronics are my accompaniment. So I think that's
great. I
yeah,
love
it's really
that.
interesting. So, and this piece of the 3 includes like the most variety of extended techniques. So it includes color changes similar to the La Vista with the timbre change, alternate fingerings. It includes flutter tonguing. It includes percussive effects, like with just playing only with the keys. It includes glissando, which on bassoon, I don't know how it is on flute, but on bassoon, it's a bit tricky. And then it also includes multiphonics. So those are the 3 pieces. I think they're little known, but they're so historically and artistically significant and important. And I think that I'm just so happy to be getting this music out there for a few more viewers, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are watching this, Ashley, would you mind telling us one more time where the performance is going to take place? And obviously, we'll put a link to it on our Facebook page, but why don't you tell us a little bit where?
Of course. So this recital is part of a Mexican contemporary music series recital put on by Tres Museos, which is a group of 3 museums. It's the, oh my goodness, I had it right here. It's the Mexican History Museum, the Museum of the Northeast, and the Museum of the Governmental Palace. So all 3 of these museums are Mexican museums, and they're putting on now a series of online concerts, right? Since we can't be in person. So my concert will be streamed virtually on Facebook. We'll put the link on the Tres Museos page, and it will be, yeah, September 3rd at 8 p.m.
All right. Well, I mean, I know I will be there for sure, virtually, all the way
Yeah,
from
of course.
California. I've got to make sure I get the time difference,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this
So
is
it's Central Time,
yeah. So
8
it's
p.m. Central Time.
Central Time.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
And I'll go ahead and put the link to this event on our Facebook page. There's also it's going to have a website, thecarloschavesproject.com, where is like a blog, and I'll put this interview on there with some notes as well as some of the recommendations that Ashley talked about for recordings and things like that, and some other links to the composers. I'm sure these composers probably have some websites or
Yeah,
something
I
that
think
that
I think a couple of them maintain websites, but also, I mean, now in these days, a Google search, you're going to find so much
Mhm.
more, so much about these guys, and even hear some of their pieces online. So,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, is there anything else?
well, I mean, I'd love to talk more. I mean, more about maybe my experiences in the orchestra here in Mexico, or I mean,
Yeah.
my
What?
experience teaching. I mean, we can save this all for other days, other topics, but
Well, why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about what the orchestra you're playing with nowadays in Mexico?
sure. So we're in Monterey. You asked me, I think yesterday, what's like one of the biggest differences about Mexican orchestras to American orchestras. And again, I'm not the be all end all of information here, right? This is just coming from my own experiences. But in general, the orchestras here are funded by the government. They're funded by the state, or by, in our case, by a university of the state, a state university. Um, so we are the Orquesta Sinfónica de la Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. We're approximately 70 members in our group. We're a full symphony orchestra. We are part of the university. We rehearse on university campus. We use university facilities, but we are a professional orchestra. We generally, in normal times before the pandemic, we give concerts we follow the school schedule. So like from, a fall semester and a spring semester. And we give new concerts every Thursday night. Usually they are also streamed on Facebook, so you can hear them live. Even before the pandemic, we were streaming our concerts.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So anyways, in my time here, we've had 2 different directors. The first director we had was a lot more like we were talking the Eurocentric sort of programming. And our newest director, his name is Eduardo Diaz Munoz. He's originally from Mexico City. Actually, he was one of my professors when I was at the University of Illinois. He was the opera orchestra conductor.
Wow. Isn't that
Isn't
great?
that crazy? It's such a small world.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
anyway, since he's been here, he's been programming quite a bit more Mexican music, which I mean, it's like the timing could not have worked out better for me. Um, in fact, I think I just got notice we're going to be recording a Revueltas piece here pretty soon for the pandemic. And like as a small, I think it's oh man, I'm not prepared, but it's a chamber music piece by Revueltas.
Oh, that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be
Maybe
cool.
another topic for us to cover here in the Carlos Chavez Project. I'm actually reading his letters. There's a book of
Oh yeah.
letters. Yeah, I love getting into the composers personal business.
Well, it affects how they
I,
compose. I mean, that's what makes
mm,
them, you know, geniuses, I think, is their personality.
Revueltas, yeah, Revueltas is another one, another great composer. I found out something really interesting. That he was he was in the United States for a while for a tour, and he actually spent the night in Roanoke, Virginia one day, and he wrote a letter from Roanoke, Virginia, which is it's interesting because I just moved from Virginia, and I was very close. I worked very close to that city, so it just was really interesting that to see that he had
And you have
written
that connection, yeah.
on his way to New York City. You know, he had to spend the night in Roanoke. So I said, that's so interesting. Sylvester Revueltas in Roanoke, Virginia, spent one night. The things you find out when you read these
Exactly.
things. But anyway,
The rabbit holes you go down.
yeah. But another one, another great composer. But that's exciting, Ashley. I mean, it's so great to hear how well you're doing down there in Mexico and the orchestra and yeah, it's so interesting that you're right. A lot of orchestras in Mexico and a lot of bands as well are pretty much funded by the government, or by a big part, you know. And in Europe as well, we see a lot of orchestras right now at that are performing live, and they're not filling their halls with
Hmm.
all their their, and then we asked ourselves and said, well, how are they even surviving, with not 100% ticket ticket sales to fill their, well, a lot of them are subsidized by the government, and and that's something that's different here in the US. A lot of our major orchestras and are not are not subsidized by the government. They have, well, if they're lucky, they have large private endowments, but it is an interesting comparison for
Yeah,
sure.
it's different. Of course, I mean, here as the government changes, right, over different presidential terms and things like that, party terms. I mean, things are always changing, but yeah, we are supported by the government or paid by the government, by the university. So it's a state university.
All right. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my cat back there. I mean,
Oh,
he's been back there the whole time.
he's cute. He wants to be part of the action.
His name is Berlioz, so he's very
Oh, sure,
musical, and so he probably wanted to be part of this
sure.
interview. I know, but talking about, maybe I should have named him Chavez, right? Well, I have a cat named Carlos,
Oh,
so
okay.
but we're trying to get away from the Eurocentric, and here I am with a naming my cat Berlioz. But anyway, that was more of a decision from the Aristocats. I don't know if you've seen
Oh,
that
I'm
movie,
sorry. I
but
haven't. I haven't. I have to do my
uh,
research.
yeah. Um, anyway, Ashley, it's so good to talk to you and catch up, and I can't wait to hear this concert on September 3rd.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I think this is such the time to promote this kind of music. Actually, I just have been in touch with people, spreading word about this recital, and I've even gotten some really cool feedback. Like professors, actually, the professor at ASU told me that he's requiring all his students to play on their recitals at least one piece by an underrepresented composer or a female composer. So, I mean, this is just the right time to
Right.
be doing this kind of work and this kind of research, and just raising awareness that these pieces exist and that they're great. So I'm
Yeah,
happy
and
to do it.
hopefully, and we'll be doing more, right? It's just the beginning, so we'll be doing a lot more.
Yeah, thank you, Sixto, so much for having me on this project. And I hope I can join you another time to talk
My
about another topic.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. And thank you all so much for everybody that's watching. Don't miss Ashley's concert. Keep up with our Facebook page, and we'll see you for our next talk.